place you do not know.
And hello, everybody, wherever you are, and no matter what time it is for you. And let me just share my screen once again, and we are in business. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Can you see my screen now? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Great. Yeah. Okay. Hold on. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are about to start touring Masada. This is well, if we have any newcomers whatsoever. So my name is Julia Newman. As I was introduced, I'm a tour guide in Israel. I've guided Masada for who knows how many times, and yet each time I go there, I'm excited because it is truly amazing and truly important. As I will try to explain later. This is my email address if you have anything private to tell me, and this is a pay what you wish tour with this is my PayPal account. You are muted, of course. If you want to say something, so you're welcome to unmute yourself. Otherwise, you're welcome to write on chat, and I will look at the chat in the end of the presentation, and then I will answer. But if there is, please, if there's anything specific you want to know, you want to say about this specific slide you're watching now, so let me know as we are looking at it, because yesterday I was giving a virtual tour to another group, and in the end of the tour, there was a guy who was, listen, there was something small, brownish, grayish in the corner. Could you please explain what it is? And then we had to watch the whole presentation again before I could find this little brownish thing in the corner. So if there is something you are really specifically interested in, so please unmute yourself and say so. Okay. All right. So speaking of the future presentations, as you already heard, we have two brave, amazing special officers, ladies. For the next 2 weeks, Mor and Ayelet, both are just amazing. So this is something you really have to look forward to. Well, you will have more information in the information sent by Steve and Ilana. And speaking of the previous presentation, so I spoke to Sar today. The Mossad agent who shared the latest story of the Mossad. So he said that he really enjoyed the presentation and he will be happy to be back, and I'm sure we will invite him again. Yes, Ilana, you agree, I can see that. So we are, Pamela agrees as well, so no question about that. We already have the entire month plus scheduled, okay? But he will be back during February, God willing. In the same time, as you notice, he did not have a presentation. He was actually speaking. He did not share his screen. Therefore, he could not share his PayPal information, which he actually wanted to do, but he was somehow shy. I don't know. There was some sort of a, I don't know, confusion. So anyhow, right here, you have PayPal's account of Saal. This is his name, Saal Kadmon. I promise that I will share this information with you. So this is exactly what I'm doing. So if you enjoyed his presentation, and I'm sure you did, so he will really appreciate your contribution on this PayPal account. Okay, so that's paypal.me/Saal-Kadmon. That's referring to the previous presentation. And let's start with the current presentation. So here we go. I don't know if there's anybody here who never been to Masada. I'm pretty sure there's nobody who never heard of Masada, which makes my duty here a bit easier and a bit more difficult because, you already know things, but in the same time, well, since you know and since you came, so probably you love Masada. So to begin with, just to make sure we know where Masada is, you can see that there is a little star on the right at the bottom, and this is Jerusalem, and this is where most people start driving towards the Masada. So if suppose you start driving from Jerusalem, so you start driving directly downhill to the east till you reach the west coast of the Dead Sea, and then you keep driving all the way south You pass Mitzpeh Shalem, which is a kibbutz. Quite a few ladies here, I'm sure, remember this place because this is where the Ahava factory and visitor center is located. And so many people stop on their way to Masada or back in Mitzpeh Shalem to get some free, So we keep driving south, we pass En Gedi, which is a beautiful, amazing natural reserve, and there is an ancient synagogue, and this place deserves a special separate tour, which will happen in the future.
Right.
And then we keep driving south, and then we take a right, and this is Masada, okay? It is located, as you can see, across this part of the Dead Sea, which used to be the most shallow part of the Dead Sea. And since the level of the Dead Sea is getting lower and lower every year, so this part, which was shallow to begin with, became dry. And so if you remember, for those who've been to top of Masada, when you look this direction, you can hardly see a small strip of bluish water, and this is this one. And then if you keep driving south, so you will reach Ein Bukek, and this is where all the hotels of the Dead Sea are located, and this is where you can get your massage and solarium and all that stuff. So again, I'm sure quite a few people stayed overnight in Ein Bukek. And if suppose you keep driving south from Ein Bukek, so then you reach the valley of Sodom and the Mount of Sodom, the area where Sodom and Gomorrah used to be. And if you keep driving south for another 2.5 hours, maybe you reach Eilat. All right, so this is the direction here. We will stop at Masada, of course. So as we're driving from Jerusalem, we will probably stop at this spot. This is the sea level. As you know, the Dead Sea is the lowest place on earth. And so before we actually dive, before we actually keep driving downhill here towards the Dead Sea, so we stop here. We normally take a photo with this sign, and we can either take a photo of Shusha. Okay, this is that's camel's name. So you can either take a photo with Shusha or on Shusha or something of this kind. And then we keep driving another a few kilometers. We will stop for a coffee at the Lido petrol station. This is what it's called, the lowest petrol station on the planet. Okay, this is true. This is checked. 394 meters below sea level, which is approximately 1,200 feet below sea level. So we get coffee. We can get petrol right behind this guy. And as we leave the petrol station, you see there is this sign, which has Arabic and English on it, and it doesn't have any Hebrew. And that's because this road sign was here before this was Israel. So this road sign belongs to the Jordanians, meaning before 1967. And by the way, well, it mentions the Dead Sea, which is obvious, but it also mentioned a place here. You see, it says Khirbet Qumran. Khirbet is ruin, and Qumran is a geographical area and caves where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found back in 1947. This amazing, again, truly amazing story, which deserves a separate presentation. So right now, we just got our coffee. We take a right here. We keep driving, and that's what we see on our way, okay? We were driving to Masada a week ago, okay, in reality, okay? Me and Ido, my husband, we were driving to Masada to take these photos, so you will see Masada as updated as possible. And we saw this herd of camels and a white donkey and a Bedouin boy who took care of the camels. By the way, for those who have never been to Israel, we don't ride camels, okay? We don't. Most people in Israel will not keep them even as pets, but some Muslim and especially Bedouins, they will have camels just as, well, camel is expensive. It is a traditional and expensive and quite useless animal today. And so people would have camels just because they can, okay? It's like Why do you need an iPhone 11 or whatever is the newest version? Well, just because you can. Same is true for camels. So these camels belong to, well, this is the son of the owner, and the owner lives behind the bush, okay? Behind the bush, about a mile north, that's where Jericho is, which is another very interesting, most ancient city. Well, there's much to say about Jericho, but we are on our way to Masada. Another amazing phenomenon, which is very, very rare, we could see on the way are the waves. You see the Dead Sea waves, it almost never happens. For two reasons. One, because the Dead Sea is so low. And since it is low, it is actually surrounded and protected by mountains on both sides, on the Israeli side, on the Jordanian side. And in addition to that, the water being so salty and full of minerals, it is very heavy. So you need real strong wind to overcome the protection of the mountains and to make this heavy water move. So when we saw these waves, it was like, wow, this is especially for us, you know. So these are the Dead Sea waves. You can see the palm trees right next to Masada, being unhappy about the wind, but we were happy, and there is a moon right above the date palms. See? Okay, so we made it to Masada. We were driving from north to south, and then we took a right, meaning west. We were driving this road all the way to here, and this is Masada National Park, and this is where the visitor center is located, and this is where you take the cable car, and this is where there is a big gift shop as well, if you remember. Okay, that's what Masada looks like. Okay, it's sort of a what would you call this shape? Rhombus, something like that. Yeah, okay, rhombus shape, more or less. It is a totally separated cliff. You see that it's totally separated from the rest of the mountains. And because it is separated and elevated and steep and hard to get, that's what actually made Masada so important, and that's the reason for us to visit. So we were coming from the east, and we are about to take a cable car. Otherwise, you can use a snake path. Okay, you can see this little winding snake path, or if you're coming from the west, so there is another road. You can see it here on the right, which reaches the footsteps of Masada from the other side, but then you have to hike uphill. It's not as difficult as the snake path. You actually hike the Roman ramp, which is something we're going to talk about later, but finally you get to the top of Masada. All right, so here we are. This is the beautiful lunar pale landscape of the ancient bottom of the Dead Sea. This geological formation is called Chaval, which means pale rocks. And this is a youth hostel. This is a very nice youth hostel with a pool and everything. And this is a great place to stay overnight if you plan to hike Masada for sunrise, which is something very popular among young people, and not just young people. So it's a great base. And well, right now we are not hiking Masada. We approach the main entrance of the visitor center here. Again, for those who've been to Masada, do you remember how this place is supposed to look like? Like full of buses, full of cars, full of tourists, right? Getting up and down and back and forth and looking for each other and speaking all the languages of the world. Right now, it's just us. It was so, you know, I knew that that's what I'm gonna see, but yet it was so sad and empty, you know. So, but it is for us now. We walk into the visitor center, and this is what we see first. I'm going to get our tickets now, and you're welcome to take a look at this 3D model of Masada. Again, we are located around here, and we are going to take a cable car all the way to the top of the cliff. Here, Okay, if you don't want to take the cable car, so then you can start hiking the snake path. It will take you about an hour, maybe 45 minutes, depends on how fit you are. So if you wish, you can start hiking, and the others will follow me to the cable car. So we walk upstairs, and there is a little exhibit just before we enter the cable car. And on this exhibit, you can see some photos of the archaeological excavations which took place here. And you can see some of these huge vessels and also smaller ones, which were found on top of Masada. Most of them were found broken, of course, and then the archaeologists actually fixed them. They cured them. Fixing of a broken ancient jar in Hebrew is called ratpaut, from the word rofe, a physician. Okay, so you actually heal the vessels. The big one is called pitas. All right, so now we have our tickets and we are ready to go. Please. All right. Now, as you can see, we are riding the cable car. You could hear the announcement in Hebrew and in English. Welcome to Masada National Park. You can see the snake path. Now it disappeared on the left. And now we are looking east. We are looking towards the Dead Sea. We can see this very bare, very white formation. Again, the whole area, the whole desert here used to be the bottom of the Dead Sea until quite recently. I mean, not in the times of King Herod, but about 10,000 years ago. We're almost there. We are about to walk this bridge here. We're about to park at this upper station of the cable car. These photos were taken through the glass windows of the cable car. So we're almost there. And just before, okay, we already get off the cable car. You're welcome to take your first photos of the surroundings. But before we actually enter the gate into Masada, we are walking just a few stairs downstairs to see this. Well, you probably guessed what it is. This is a water cistern. Now, this water cistern is the one and the only cistern on the east side of Masada, on the east slope of Masada. And the only source of water, well, today it is empty, of course, but when Masada was inhabited, the only source of water for this cistern was this little, you see this canal here on the left? This canal used to begin at the top of Masada and used to collect the rainwater from the roofs and from the surface of Masada. And then that water would run into this opening here on the left and finally reach the water cistern. So this water cistern, again, this is the only one on the east slope, and it depends on the water which comes directly on top of Masada. It actually depends on the rainfall on Masada. But this is not enough. You know that Masada is in the middle of the desert. We're talking about some 50, maybe 50 millimeters of rainfall per year, meaning that this is, you can't make a living this way. So you have to supply water from another source. So that's something to keep in mind. And here we are standing on the mount. We just entered the gate, which is here on the left. This is the Israeli flag. Most tourists, and well, maybe you remember yourself, most tourists feel like it is a must to take a photo here, either before the tour or after the tour, or even better, before and after. So we shall stand right here. Well, right now we have 90 participants at least. So, well, this is a big spot. So let's take a moment. Let's take a photo. What you see in front of you, again, this is the empty area, which used to be the Dead Sea not that long ago. And then you can see this blue streak of water of Dead Sea water. And then behind it, you may be able to see, well, the air is not clear enough, but you may be able to see some, well, white hill, okay? This one is already in Jordan. So we took our photo and we take a right and we start walking. So you see, we are here now. This is the upper station of the cable car. We just entered Masada. We took a photo. Well, this is the gate here. We took our photo and now we take a right and we will be walking around this area. This is the most, as you can see, the most populated, well, used to be populated and built out area of Masada. We will see what is there. There is another large, impressive structure here and another one here. Okay, so we will be focusing on this area. Before we actually start walking, well, you know the story of Masada, but just to make sure we are on the same page, Masada is a fortress, okay? In the ancient times, the Hasmoneans, the guys from Hanukkah, the Hasmonean kings identified this cliff as a great place to build a fortress. And therefore, they built a fortress. How do we know that? Well, because the great historian Josephus Flavius, or Yosef ben Matityahu, this is his original Hebrew name, he tells us about it. By the way, we have to keep in mind that this is something really important for our story. We have to keep in mind that whatever I will tell you, whatever you ever heard about Masada, okay, comes from this one guy, one source, Yosef ben Matityahu, Josephus Flavius. He is the only source of knowledge for us. So sometimes, or some people, don't believe him. I mean, they will say, no, it never happened. Can we question him? Well, maybe he's wrong. Do we have any other way to know what happened? No, nothing. So whatever I'm going to tell you is based upon Yosef ben Matityahu, Josephus Flavius. And then if in the end of the presentation, you will tell me, well, I don't believe this guy. That's fine, okay? And we also have the archaeology. So we will not argue with the archaeology, well, most of the time. But the explanation of the archaeological find, this is something else. All right, so back to the time frame of Masada. Josephus Flavius tells us that the Hasmonean kings identified a cliff and built a fortress on top of it. That happened in the 2nd century BCE. Later, the Romans made the kingdom of Judea into their province. And even later, we have that very famous guy, this very famous king, Herod, better known as King Herod the Great, who became a king, and he was constantly afraid of something, somebody, most of the time more than one person or one event. And therefore, King Herod the Great took 6 Hasmonean fortresses, including Masada. Okay, this is not the only one. It is the most famous by far, but it's not the only one. So he took the 6 Hasmonean fortresses and made them into a better fortress. Okay, better in terms of protection and better in terms of the well-being of himself, just in case he will need to spend time there. In other words, this palace, which became the best, the biggest, the really the just the top of the top of the line. It is a fortress and a palace in the same time. It is a fortress which has 2 palaces on it. Okay, one is here, this square structure. Okay, I hope you can see my cursor. So this is the so-called Western Palace. And he had another palace, which is at the very bottom of the slide. And this is the Northern Palace. And in addition to the two palaces, he had a swimming pool, he had warehouses, he had a bathhouse, sorry, two of them. And he had whatever he could wish as a king. Besides, as I told you, he took 6 fortresses which were built by the Hasmoneans and improved them. But he took one cliff and made it into a palace and a fortress for the first time. I mean, there's only one fortress, which is Herodian, without Hasmonean history. And this is the one which is called Herodian. So next week, we're going to visit Herodian, which is the one and the only King Herod's fortress, which is started from scratch. Okay? By the way, he had a good reason for that. But this is next week. All right. Back to Masada. King Herod the Great made Masada the best, the beautiful, the everything. And then he died. Okay, that happened. King Herod the Great died 4 BCE. He hardly ever used Masada. And then, well, he died, but Masada did not. Oh, well, obviously, it just stayed. And then in the 66 AD, which is exactly 70 years after King Herod passed away, the Great Jewish Revolt started. It started in Caesarea, not far away from my home, by the way. And then it spread all over Israel and into Jerusalem and the Golan Heights. And as you know, 4 years later, 70 AD, the Romans conquered Jerusalem and ruined the temple, right? We know that. Ever since, we don't have the temple on the Temple Mount, okay? All we have is the Western Wall. Well, right in the beginning of the revolt, the Jewish nation split into a few fractions, into a few parties, if you wish. One of the parties is known as the Zealots. And a certain fraction of the Zealots is called Sicarians. Okay, it's not that important for you to remember, but what I'm trying to do is that the Jews were not united, and therefore different parties, different fractions reacted in a different way to the events of the revolt. One specific fraction, which belonged to the Zealot party, they left Jerusalem in the very beginning of the revolt, and they moved to Masada. So the Jewish story, which is the most significant for us, and this is actually why people visit Masada, not because it is an amazing fortress in the desert. By the way, it is a UNESCO heritage site. Did you know that? Well, yes, but this is not why most people visit Masada. The Jews entered Masada almost immediately after the beginning of the Great Revolt. That is either the end of 66 AD or beginning of 67 AD, and they stayed on Masada for 7 years in a row. So we have these Jews, these zealots, and probably others as well, which joined them, who lived here from 66 to 73 AD. How come? Because the Romans were too busy with other places. You know, there were more interesting, more important sites rather than Masada, which is a cliff in the middle of the desert. And only when all the other strongholds of the revolt were suppressed, only then the Romans were, well, now we are available to take care of Masada. So we will be telling the end of that story later, but what I was trying to say is that Masada is an amazing site, no matter what you believe, no matter what you think of Josephus Levis, no matter whether you're Jewish or not. But the reason why people actually visit Masada, and this is the second visited site in Israel after Jerusalem. Okay, I don't know if you know that, but this is the second best for tourists. And that's because of the story which took place on Masada, not because of the structures, but we have to look at the structures because we're touring. We walk upstairs here. You see there is a girl. This is the only people we saw on Masada now. She's sliding downhill. We are walking carefully upstairs, and we are going to enter this opening here in between the walls. And as soon as we walk here in between the walls, we are entering something which is believed to be the headquarters of the commander of Masada in the times of King Herod. I mean, when King Herod was still alive, he was a king in Jerusalem. He had a magnificent palace in Jerusalem. He had a beautiful villa by the sea in Caesarea, you know, in between Tel Aviv and Haifa. He had another beautiful palace elsewhere. And he also had that fortress just in case of emergency. So this is one of the rooms of the commander. You can see the fresco. This is the original fresco, which is over 2,000 years old. It was renovated, but it is the original one. You see these pillars, you see that plaster, you see this fresco here. It is all original, and it used to decorate the house of the commander of the best fortress of King Herod. Well, in that corner, you see there is a little round thing. Now, as you look at it, it is not quite clear what it is, but what is clear that the guy who built this beautiful dwelling, okay, placed this beautiful frescoes which survived for so many years, he is not the same guy who built this little round thing. Okay, this is quite clear. And as we look at it, we understand that the guy who built this little round structure, he did not care about luxury. He was not into beauty. He was into survival. So this structure, which is identified as an oven, that must belong to the rebels, okay? The fortress, the palace, was made for the king, his family, and some servants, of course. According to Josephus Flavius, there were about 1,000 people who lived on Masada. So, you know, when you have to host 1,000 guests, you cannot be picky. We keep walking, and we are walking in a warehouse. You see, this is a very long, very empty room. We have a few dozens of rooms of this kind, and this is where the broken jars we saw at the lobby before the cable car, this is where they were found. Now you see this is a very empty room, while this room on the left is the, well, it's hard to call it a room. It's actually a big pile of stones, right? So the difference between the two photos is that the archaeologists who excavated Masada during the 60s, they had to lift all these stones one by one until they reached the floor. So some of the warehouses were actually cleaned and restored, and we can imagine what they look like, except of the roof. Okay, you have to imagine that this place has a roof, and it is actually well sealed because, you know, this is a palace in case of emergency, and so you don't know when this emergency will occur. So you want to have a warehouse full of goods. And this warehouse was not cleaned, it was not excavated, just in order so we, the tourists, can understand what a hell of a work was done here. So again, those of you who love archaeology and plan on archaeological excavations, so this is probably less recommended, okay? Now, let's see just a few examples of the finds which were made there. One of them is, you see, it is a piece of pottery. Well, excuse me for the quality of the photo, but this is all I could get. It is an old one. It is a piece of pottery with an inscription on it. I hope you can see the inscription. You're not supposed to be able to read it, okay? But you can see that something is written there. Can you see it? Yeah, Elena? Okay, great. So that inscription describes what used to be in that jar. And what used to be here is a very high quality wine from Italy. So King Herod the Great made sure that in case of emergency, at least he can get drunk. Then we also found these beautiful cups, beautiful vessels made of stone. And this is something really special because you don't normally make cups of stone because it is very difficult and it is very heavy. But stone-made stone-made vessels and cups, they will stay pure. Okay, this is it needs a bit more of explanation, but it is pure no matter what gets into it, according to the Jewish tradition. And this is my favorite. This is a palm tree which is called Methuselah, which used to be a date seed found in one of the warehouses. So there was a date, over 2,000 years ago, which didn't make it to our days, but the seed made it to our days. And that seed actually came back to life. This is a date palm resurrection. So today, this photo is a few years old. So now the palm tree is taller, and it grows in Kibbutz Torah, which is on your way to Eilat. And this is the palm tree which is 2,000 something years old. It's called Methuselah because Methuselah is the grandfather of Noah, and he is the oldest person mentioned in the Bible. By the way, Methuselah is a father now. We keep walking, and now we make it to the large bathhouse, as you can see here, straight in here. And again, we see the beautiful fresco. We see this beautiful structure. And in the corner, we have this little miserable thing, okay? Looking like a square tub, maybe. Again, the guy who made the fresco is not the guy who built the tub. So probably it belongs to the rebels. A bathhouse will always have a dressing room and a cold pool, which is here, and a moderate room, which is here. And then we walk through this little corridor, which is very low. Probably King Herod was no tall. And finally, we make it to this final room, which is the best of all. This is the caldarium, the hot room, the steam bath, if you wish. Okay. So yeah, they love the good life, as I said. Outside, on the other side of this, there is a glass here. When the bathhouse was working, so obviously there was no glass. On the other side, there was a fireplace, and then the hot air would be pushed by bellows underneath, in between these pillars, and then there would be a floor on top of it. So you will have the hot floor and hot walls, and you will have a wonderful either dry bath or steam bath. You're in the middle of the desert. Yeah, just a reminder, we are in the middle of the desert. And as we leave the bathhouse and we literally walk around the corner, there is this board. It says the discovered location of the lot. I don't want to talk about it right now, but I do want you to notice that it's right around the corner from the bathhouse. As we walk around Masada, we see it, but we will talk about it a bit later. Maybe this is the end of the story of Masada. Okay, these are the pieces of pottery, the pottery shards, which might have been used through the lot, but okay, that's in the end of the story. We keep walking here. You see on the right, we are walking upstairs. We make it to the upper level of the northern palace. We are standing now right here, looking towards the north. Down below, There is the middle part, the middle level of the palace. We're not sure what was it used for. It looks like, well, one circle of walls and another circle of walls. We have different ideas of what it is. Nobody really knows. And the lower level, which is the private palace of King Herod. I mean, this is the best place on Masada to see down, look north, see En-Gedi, see the Dead Sea, and again, just enjoy the good life you have in the desert. So we are walking downstairs, 150 stairs, to the lower level of the Northern Palace. And, well, this what the archaeologists found when they first made their way down there in 1964. You can see the bones, you can see a skull, you can see more bones. You can see a sandal here, you can see hair. We don't really know whom these remains belong to, but these could be the remains of the rebels. Okay, when these bones were discovered, there was no radiocarbon analysis, so we cannot tell. Again, we have various theories, but these might have been the last survivals of the rebels of Masada. And, you know, no matter what, I mean, these are human beings, and they were never buried. They just died there, and they were abandoned there forever before the archaeologists found them. And then there was a military ceremony, there was a burial ceremony when they were buried according to the Jewish tradition, and the prime minister participated in that ceremony. So now there is a common grave of these maybe rebels at the footsteps of Masada. Now a few more finds. Look, these what the coins look like on the right. This is Shmuley Gutman, one of the leading archaeologists. And that's what the coins look like in the beginning, and that's what they look like after they were cleaned. These are the coins from the Great Jewish Revolt. Okay, no question about that. People did actually live on Masada, and they actually used these coins. Here in the center, this is something really amazing, I believe. This is a get. Okay, get is a divorce, Jewish divorce certificate. Okay, and it was found in a dry riverbed not far from Masada, not on Masada, okay, elsewhere. But this divorce certificate was given to a woman. Her name was Miriam Bat Yonatan at Masada. It actually mentioned here, so people live there, you know, people got divorced on Masada, and that woman, well, she probably left Masada before Masada was, you know, before it ended, and then she took the divorce certificate with her, and it was found just a few miles north from Masada. So Miriam got divorced on Masada. And just a few more finds. You see, this is a cover for a Roman sword. So we know that there were Roman soldiers on Masada. These are some phrases from an apocryphal book of Ben Sira. Here on the left, this was probably used for makeup. You know, probably. So we know that there were women on Masada, not just soldiers. This is the water gate. Okay, not your water gate, our water gate. The water gate, which leads towards the cisterns, the huge cisterns on the west slope of Masada. And here you can see, this is my shadow, okay? I'm taking a photo of myself taking a photo, and there is a mikveh here. Again, we know that there was Jewish life here. Now we are looking at the footsteps of Masada. This is the road coming from Arad. This is the west side, and you can see this white path leading towards the water cisterns on the slope. Now here we have a model which tries to explain how, for God's sake, they had so much water. So again, this is Masada, of course. This is the plateau of Masada. The northern palace here, okay? We just been to the water gate, which is here. And you can see that there is a small path, sort of a snake path, but this is not the snake path. This is the water path, okay, which is used by servants and donkeys. And here we come to one of these cisterns. Now, this cistern is huge. It is the size of a, well, let's say an average bedroom, but much, much deeper. We have about 50,000 cubic meters of water in two levels. We have one level here. We have another level here, 12 cisterns. The water would come from rainfall way to the right, way west on the mounts of Hebron and Arad, etc. So suppose there is a rain like 10, 20, 30 miles away on top of the mount, the water would flow in this artificial canal and fill the cisterns. The whole thing was designed and maintained by King Herod the Great. But King Herod the Great died and the water supply system survived. And therefore, when the rebels approached Masada, all they had to do is to send somebody down the water path to bring water from these cisterns to the top of Masada and fill the water cisterns, which are up here. So they actually had plenty of water. There is something quite surprising on Masada. You see a mosaic, a half circular wall, and this is what the structure looks like from outside. This is a church, okay? You would not probably expect a church on Masada of all things, but Masada was abandoned for hundreds of years, and so at some point the Byzantine monks, they realized that, hey, this is a beautiful place to live close to God, away from people. Let's have a monastery on top of Masada. So there was a monastery on top of Masada with a church, beautiful view, water supply, everything. And finally they had to leave. And ever since, meaning starting from early 7th century, nobody lives
Must
on
be FedEx guy.
Hmm?
I
So,
muted her.
thanks. We paid a very short visit to the Western Palace just to look at this beautiful mosaic on the floor, another simpler mosaic, a bath inside the palace. And, well, I don't know if anybody of you ever participated in a bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah ceremony on Masada. This is an amazing event. This is such a beautiful thing. And then if you have a large party, so normally people would use this open square just next to the Western Palace, and then the boy or the girl and the rabbi will use this little stage, and people will be sitting on plastic chairs in here. And, well, bar mitzvah on Masada is something people don't normally forget. So if you have somebody who needs to celebrate bar mitzvah on Masada after the pandemic, so you should consider this. And, well, what is this? Can you guess? Okay. If you'll not guess, so maybe now. Oh, sorry. Okay, the dove keeper. This is a columbarium. This is a dove cot. And I included it not so much because it is there, but because I know that many Americans read and loved the novel called Dove Keepers by Alice Hoffman. So this is a dove cot. So maybe Shira and Yael and other heroines of the novel, this is where they worked. And, well, finally, it's about time to talk about the very end of Masada. We are at the year 73 AD, Jerusalem is already conquered and the temple is already ruined, and all the other fortresses, all the other strongholds are already taken by the Romans. And Masada is the last, very, very last Jewish stronghold, very last source of hope, if you wish. We are standing now in one of the so-called casemates, one of the little rooms which were formed by the double wall which surrounds Masada. Probably the rebels would live in these rooms. And again, if you read the Dove Keepers, so this is where they lived, in these little compartments in between the walls. Today, if you want to celebrate Bar Mitzvah, but you don't have that many people, so people use these casemates. You see, this is the table where you put the Torah scroll, and you have some plastic chairs, and you know, it is so weird. You celebrate one of the greatest moments of your life, if you're Jewish, if you are traditional, on top of Masada, which was the last stronghold, and yet here we are. And I think this is exactly what makes Masada so special and so meaningful, because, well, we are in that casement, we are looking west, and if we look downhill, this is what we see. This is exactly below us, and this is the Roman ramp. You see here on the right, this is the path which leads towards the cisterns, the one we saw before. And here on the left, this is another path which eventually leads uphill and to the top of Masada. But this triangle, this pile of sand and rocks, this is the Roman ramp. I mean, this is what the Romans built in order to make it to Masada fast enough. They just wanted to finish that story of the revolt. So we are standing on top of Masada, Jewish, non-Jewish, in the state of Israel. Looking down here, we see this Roman ramp, which was supposed to be the end of the stronghold. And indeed it was. It was supposed to be the end of the Jewish identity and Jewish independence forever and ever. And here we are in the state of Israel. Now, if we took a little, like we look a little bit to the right, and then we will see this. You see on the right-hand side, this is a Roman camp. This is the biggest of the 8 Roman camps, which were built all around Masada, making sure that nobody will escape. And this Roman camp is ruined, and we are here in Masada, the national park. And finally, and this is where I think we should finish our tour, we enter the synagogue. Inside that synagogue, you see here on the right, this is a small room. That room was built, even though probably in the original synagogue, it did not exist, okay? This is something really unusual. We don't normally build things which were not there at an archaeological site, but the idea here was to create a room for a scribe. So when we look at through the door, which is here, now the door is locked and nobody is sitting inside, but if we look through the window, so that's what we see. You see there is a table, and normally there is a scribe, a sofer stam, who sits down here, and he writes the Torah scroll, a Torah scroll which will be entirely written on Masada. And if you come and ask him, so he will write a word or a phrase for you, and people donate money, and that's how little by little the Torah scroll is being written in the synagogue on Masada. So this is what the synagogue probably looked like when it was a working synagogue with these shells, where people were sitting and talking and praying and studying. The direction is probably Jerusalem. I'm saying probably because there was no yet fixed direction and a fixed way to pray, because the temple was destroyed 3 years earlier. That's it. I mean, we did not yet have this Judaism as we know it today with prayers, and you know, they did not know yet how to live without temple. And well, remember I told you that as we left the bathhouse, so we saw these pottery shards, this ostraca with inscriptions on them. So here we can read Ben Yair, the commander of the rebels, the commander of Masada. His name was Elazar Ben Yair. Maybe there were other Ben Yair as well, we don't know. But Josephus Flavius describes the speech of Elazar when he was talking to his followers. And well, it's a very long, very moving, very difficult speech. And you see, this is just a short part of it. But he said, let our wives die before they are abused, and our children before they are placed in slavery. Basically, it's better for them, for all of us, to commit suicide. It's better for us to die rather than to be the slaves of the Romans. They knew that that's it. It's lost. They saw the ramp. There was a fire which damaged the protection of the wall. They knew that they're alone. They probably knew that they're the last Jewish stronghold. They did not want to be slaves. They did not want their children to be slaves, and therefore they drew the lots. Now, these pieces of pottery with names on them, these were the first 11 pieces of pottery with names found on Masada. And so when they were found by Igael Yadin, a famous officer who was the chief commander of the excavation, he was sure positive that these are the lots. I mean, we have the name Ben Yair here. We have 11 lots. What else do you need? But later, they kept excavating, and eventually they found about 900 pieces of pottery with different names on them. So we don't really know whether these were the lots or these were not the lots. We don't know. And even more so, not everybody believes that the suicide on Masada actually happened, okay, for different reasons. So, you know, I would like to finish the presentation saying that maybe it did, maybe it did not, but it doesn't really matter because it is such a powerful symbol. It is such a meaningful story that even if it is fake, we are influenced by it. You know, just a small example. When we want to say that something will never ever happen, okay, when we just speak Hebrew modern life, and I want to say that something will never take place, I would say Masada will not fall again. Okay, Masada is part of our lives. I mean, we cannot actually imagine our lives in Israel without the story of Masada. It doesn't mean that we advise soldiers to commit suicide. No, we advise soldiers to become prisoners of war if there is no other choice. But it is obvious for soldiers that they will fight and they will do whatever it takes to protect. You know, we must win the battle because Masada will not fall again. So we take a cable car back downhill. We are on our way to the State Visitor Center. You can see the one and the only Roman camp, which is restored, okay, right next to the cable car. So once again, we fly over the Roman camp, and the Romans are not here. We are. And we are about to land at this lower station, and then we can either take a left and get a coffee, cake, lunch, or, you know, cosmetics, whatever. Right now, everything is closed, so we will simply walk downstairs and back to our bus. Yes, are you ready to land? We're almost there in a second. All right. That's it. Once again, we're looking at this beautiful pale landscape. And We will be sitting here, if you wish, waiting for the sunset. And when the moon is full, so it is so bright and shining that you can actually either read or dance or meditate. It is totally magical. So next time you come to Israel, we shall sit down here and wait for sunset. So thank you for watching. Donations are appreciated. You're welcome to unmute yourself. I will be looking at the chat. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let's see. Let's start from the beginning. Well, I have quite a few chats here. Okay, yeah.
Julia, for the people that are still with us, why don't you mention about the next Tuesday and the IDF rescue team in Nepal?
Okay. So next Tuesday, we have a presentation by a young girl. She's less young now than she was when the story she's gonna tell occurred. She was the youngest Israeli IDF officer, lady, female, on the rescue team to Nepal, which was sent by the IDF after the earthquake in Nepal, because she was already trained. Her military training was as a rescue team officer. So she was already trained, and all of a sudden, like midnight, she got a phone call. Hey, do you have your passport? And she said, well, yeah, I do have my passport home. So her commander told her, well, so you have to leave whatever you do now. You go home, you take your passport, you get vaccines for the Far East, and 4 a.m. you should present yourself at the airport. So that's exactly what happened. And she went to Nepal, and she will share her personal experience in Nepal, and generally speaking, as a rescue team officer of the IDF. So her name is Ayelet Zion, and I believe that will be very impressive and very inspiring. So that's next Tuesday. Thursday, we're going to Herodion, this special, beautiful King Herod's fortress in between Jerusalem and Bethlehem, where he was buried. So we will be visiting the tomb of King Herod the Great. And then next Tuesday, we have another presentation by another amazing IDF female officer. Her name is Mor, and she was, I think she was the first ever female officer of the Iron Dome unit. So she will tell us about her training, about her experience, about her participation in the various Israeli operations in Gaza. I mean, she was not in Gaza herself, but she was responsible for the Iron Dome protecting the civilians around Gaza Strip during these operations. So that's more. This is next Tuesday. And again, I'm sure it will be very special, interesting, and inspiring. And since she will be talking about the Gaza Strip and the surroundings, she will be, well, better to say, she will be talking about the people living around Gaza Strip and their life experience. So next Thursday, we will be touring something we call in Hebrew Otef Aza, the area which is around Gaza Strip. So you will hear from her, and then you'll be touring with me, and you will see that this around Gaza Strip is not just about battles and you know, Iron Dome and military, but also about beautiful nature and beautiful people and culture and much more. So you will, in 2 weeks, you will be well familiar with the surroundings of Gaza Strip. All right?
Right.
All right. So, okay, so we have first Harry. I heard that Israel and Jordan were going to have Red Sea water to fill the dying Dead Sea. Has anything come out of this? The answer is no, nothing at all. This is something it is a project, joint Israeli Jordanian project, financed, which was supposed to be financed by the International Bank. It is called a Red Dead Canal. And yes, we are talking about it for many, many years. Nothing happens for different political, economical, geological, and other reasons. But the bottom line is no, nothing happens. Okay. Stuart said 3 times I've been there, 3 times the different path, cable car, the snake path, and the siege ramp. All right. Well, next time you have to use a parachute, I guess. What is the name of the hotel mentioned earlier?
I think she meant the hostel.
Oh, the hostel, probably, yes. Well, that's easy. It's called Masada. Okay. Yeah, not surprising. It is a youth hostel, but it is a very nice hostel indeed. I've stayed there a few times, and yeah, recommended. Masada Youth Hostel. Any idea what would have been kept in the vessel on display in the museum? Well, no, I don't know, but generally speaking, these vessels were used for liquid. So that could be either wine or oil, most probably. Some of them actually even had inscriptions, and they had a special sauce made of fish. It has a name, I don't remember the name, but it's a very, very special fish-based sauce, which was imported from Napoli. Gabud or something like that. Were there not records from the Roman, not 20, but 10th Legio? Yes, yes, there are. I didn't show it at the presentation, but yes, we do have inscriptions. We do have seals of the 10th Legio on and near Masada. Yes, sure. I mean, we know for sure that there were Jews living there. We know for sure that the Romans used to be there. What we do not know, I mean, what we cannot prove is the suicide. Okay, Jews, Romans, battle, yes. Suicide, the only source of knowledge is Josephus Flavius. I thought Harry said, I thought archaeology verified Josephus Flavius' historical description of events. Well, again, yes and no, because Josephus Flavius describes the siege system. He describes the siege wall. He describes the Roman camps. Yes, for sure, we found that. He was right. But as we talk about suicide, as we speak of the speech of Eleazar, there's no way this could be archaeologically proved. Okay. Yeah, okay. No one denies that the siege took place. Right, okay. That's exactly what Howard said. The shape of Masada reminds me of the shape of current day Israel, even cut off Sinai. Well, maybe. Okay, smaller, but yeah. Okay, well, maybe the opening was small in order to keep the steam within. Are any remnants of the other homes still there? Was there another bathhouse that people other than those of Herod's temple could use? Well, there is this large bathhouse, the one we saw together. There is another small bathhouse inside the northern palace. There is a swimming pool. There are mikvahs. Okay, we don't think the rebels actually could afford themselves using the bathhouse because we read in the Mishnah, for instance, that bathhouses were very much associated with Roman rule, with the dictatorship, with life which is dedicated to pleasure rather than to prayer and spiritual life. So in general, at least the sages were against using the bathhouse. And also on the practical level, in order to use the bathhouse for so many people, you need so much water and you need so much wood. Okay, and this is something they probably could not afford themselves. So the assumption is that they did not use the bathhouse as a bathhouse. Is Masada still being excavated? No, not really. I mean, it was really very well excavated in the past. They still have like very small, more of restoration works. Like for instance, some of the frescoes I've showed you, they were recently restored. Okay, some of the mosaics, but no archaeological excavations any longer. Larry said one of my grandsons had his bar mitzvah 1 year ago in Masada. Okay, Larry, congratulations. He just made it before the pandemic, huh? Lucky him. Well, I'm sure that was a special experience. Okay, you read that the Romans tried everything before resorting to creating a ramp structure. Yeah, but they quite soon they realized that it will take them too long to wait until the people of Masada will die from hunger or something like that. And also, they could not wait. The Romans could not wait for the summer to come, because then they would not make it. The summer is way too hot in this area, and they were camping. You saw the camps. They are on totally open, barren surface. So they just didn't feel like spending the summer at the footsteps of Masada. So yeah, quite soon they realized that they would rather make a ramp. And by the way, speaking of, can we believe Josephus Flavius? Okay, I told you that this is the Roman ramp, and nobody said no. Okay, so now how do we know that this is a Roman ramp? I mean, theoretically speaking, that could have been built like 200 years ago, right? Theoretically speaking, how do we know that this is the Roman ramp? Well, in this case, we do know, okay? Josephus Flavius describes the Roman ramp, okay? But we also, nowadays, we can have the radiocarbon analysis of the wooden structure, which is below this pile of sand and rocks. They're actually wooden carcasses down below. And the radiocarbon analysis of the wood was actually performed. So we know that the ramp, which is based on this wood, okay, must be same time as the wood, and the wood is still 2,000 years old. So here, yeah, we have a proof to the description of Josephus Flavius. What do you mean by lot? Perhaps this is well, no, Ilana, it's excuse me, I thought it's lot is when you draw the lots, it's like when you have to choose one person out of 10, right? So it's like a lottery. All right. So this is something Josephus Flavius described. They drew the lots. They took 10 names of guys, and then one was chosen, and that one had to kill the others and then commit suicide. Okay, well, Shebel, she was wondering the same. So Ilana, thank you so much for being brave and typing the question. Right. I want a falafel. Okay, well, Larry, I'm sorry, the falafel is not functioning because there are no tourists, but next time you come, you will probably get it. Okay, well, I think, yeah, okay, Gail said, right, the military no longer do their ceremonies there. That's right. This is so true. And yes, as I said, we praise the story of Masada, but we don't want our soldiers to commit suicide if, we do want them to be alive. In other words, we used to have this ceremonies of finishing the basic training, the what do you call it? The square of loyalty on top of Masada for certain units. They don't do it any longer because they don't want to give that message of, well, if somebody is about to take you as a prisoner, you'd better commit suicide. Okay, so we don't have that any longer. We do have bar mitzvahs. We do have tours for teenagers, for soldiers. This is part of the training. But yes, we want our soldiers to fully realize that we want them alive. And actually, they are commanded that if you have no choice but become a prisoner of war, so you have to do it, you know, and we will save you whenever possible. So yes, Gail, thank you for mentioning this. All right. Well, guys, quite a few things. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ilana. If it was suicide, wouldn't there have been a great number of bodies? Exactly. Okay, so this is one of the explanations. Like people who believe that there was a mass suicide, they say, well, look, they committed suicide, but that happened 2,000 years ago. Now we are in the desert. It is a cliff, but it is approachable. So we have wolves, we have foxes, we have hyenas, we have vultures. You know, in 2,000 years, all these beasts consumed the bodies. Otherwise, remember that church? I mean, we had a monastery on Masada. So I would assume if I am a monk, I don't feel like walking around. You know, there are too many bones around. I guess I would get rid of them. And so that's why, I mean, for me and other people who believe that the suicide actually took place, the fact that we did not find that many bones, it doesn't mean that people did not kill themselves, okay? Other people said, no, I mean, come on, so where are the bones? I mean, we were supposed to find at least something, okay? So it is a debate with no final answer. Okay. Well, not 900 lots, but 900 pieces of pottery with names on them. Obviously, they were not used as lots. They were used for other reasons. Maybe one of the explanations is that, you know, they definitely had limited ratios. I mean, they did have all these huge warehouses, but they had to make a living for years and years. So probably everybody had a limited amount of bread and grain and, you know, other supplies. So maybe it was like coupons, you know, you would give your name and you will get a certain share of supplies, something like that. We don't really know, okay? But definitely they did not do lots, like 900 people. Is there any Roman reference to Masada? No. I mean, we wish there was, because then Josephus Flavius would not be alone, okay? Bearing Carol, no. The only person who mentions Masada is Josephus Flavius, okay? Unfortunately. And again, some people will say, well, so it never happened. And others would say, well, you know, it was not a great success of the Roman army, so probably they would just, you know, they skip the details. Okay. Oh, wow. Alvin walked the snake path in 1966. Oh, my God. That was 2 years after the first excavations took place. That was so much more difficult and dangerous back then. Wow. And Larry did it the same time. Okay, maybe you did it together. I think you should have a private conversation later. Okay, and Elvis stayed overnight at the youth hostel. Okay, is the servant path on the systems open to hiking up and down? No. It is not open because it didn't survive well enough and it was not restored. You cannot actually hike it today. It's totally, like, it's way too dangerous. Pieces of cliff had collapsed, so no, it's not open for hiking. Is it? Wow, you have quite a few questions today. Okay. Is there any evidence that anyone didn't commit suicide? How did they actually commit suicide? All right. So, well, again, Josephus Flavius tells us that Eleazar spoke to the men, and the men were convinced that it's better to commit suicide, and so every man killed his own family. And then they drew the lots, and they had 10 men chosen to kill the other men, and then they drew the lots, and then one was chosen to kill the last 9 and commit suicide. Okay, that's the story. Can we prove it? No. Now, nobody asked, okay, now it's about time to ask this question. Josephus Flavius, the one who told us the story, where was he? I mean, was he there at the moment? Well, the answer is no. And here I can see Pamela, that's exactly what I was about to say. Supposedly 2 women and 5 children survived. Yes. So Josephus Flavius was in Rome when everything supposedly happened. And he tells us that he spoke to these women which survived the suicide. They actually hide. They didn't want to be killed, okay? They preferred to be slaves. So they survived. They were brought by the Romans to Rome, and they told Josephus the story. Okay, that's all we have. Now, it is highly recommended to read the book of Josephus Flavius. It's called The Jewish Wars Against the Romans. And this is where you can read the speech of Eleazar. It is amazing. It is about 4 pages long. Okay, so no way women could remember 4 pages of speech. So definitely, I mean, maybe they told him the idea, and then Josephus Flavius wrote the speech. So that's what he tells us about his source of information for Masada. He describes Masada quite accurately. At the same time, you can tell by his description that he never been to Masada. Okay, so there are some mistakes which are obvious. I mean, archaeologically obvious. You can tell that somebody described Masada for him. Maybe these women, maybe somebody else prior to that. Again, we don't know. Okay, Josephus was an interesting person indeed, very much. So yeah, he deserves another presentation. Okay, well, that's it. It seems like we are done with the chat, and we have only 33 people left, which is, wow, that's impressive. Half the span is Israeli time. So, guys, if you would like to add anything else, otherwise, again, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
That was great.
Thank you, Larry. This is great. You had this bar mitzvah.